But don't forget to watch us. We are on your computer, your mobile device. Just head on over to SuperTalk TV. And if you're looking for a good read for the beach this summer, or maybe you're going on vacation, or heck, maybe you just want to escape to your back porch and read something light but lovable, we've got that for you. When the Ocean Roars is the title of the book. And the author is with us today, Charlsie Estess. She is from Brookhaven, Mississippi, and she's a debut author, and she's excited about her launch. So welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here.
I'm happy to have you here. I also am happy to help those debut authors because it's tough, right? Like, it's tough when you have something in your head that you feel like needs to get on paper and then to get it out into the world for the world to read. Even if the world loves it, sometimes it's hard just to let folks know that there's new things sort of out there. But let's start with just explaining the book to us. So When the Ocean Roars, who would be like the perfect reader for this?
I think, so it's a Christian contemporary romance, but I think it's definitely a crossover book. I've had all kinds of readers who have enjoyed the book, but especially new adult women, kind of 18 to 30, but women of all ages, and I've even had some men that have been interested. It's a story about a young man who has had a rough upbringing, and he ends up in a profession that he is a professional prize fighter.
Yes.
And so that storyline has been really appealing to men as well.
Where did this story find you, Charlsie? Because I know we all get inspiration somewhere, and obviously we all have got these wonderful ideas in our head if you're an author or creative that way. How did this particular storyline or these particular characters come creeping into your imagination, and you thought, man, they've got to get on paper. We've got to introduce them to the world?
So the ideas it was sort of a convergence of a lot of ideas. It's really a story. Years ago, I actually had the idea years ago, and it's a story about just human struggle and triumph over human struggle. I don't want to spoil the book, but there was a real event that really weighed heavy on my heart. The sort of event that would stop you in your tracks. And so...
like in the headlines or in your own personal life?
Like in the headlines. And so it's sort of a story. At that time, I think everybody has some fighter in them. We all have our struggles. And so it's a story about a fighter. Very allegorically, it's about a fighter who is overseas for a world championship, and he ends up facing a battle that he never expected to fight. But I had seen so many of my friends struggling with, the loss of a child, cancer, those sorts of things. And it's really easy for momentary little inconveniences and distractions to, bog us down. But there are things that happen in life that really put things in perspective. And so it's a story about that. It is set in Japan, which is kind of a unique read. It is
Are you familiar with that area?
I am. So when I was in college, my background's in international finance. I studied international finance, and I worked overseas for a long time with a Fortune 500 company. I did a lot of traveling. But when I was in college, I actually studied in Japan for the better part of a year. And it made a lot of sense for this setting. And so I felt like I've been blessed to see some other things. Yeah. And it was a different location that fit the book well as a setting. And, I spent a lot of time on description, so it's not real heavy on description, but it does take people to another place and gives you a real taste of sort of the culture and the setting and the scenes.
And that's what a lot of people look for in terms of book anyway. You want to escape, you want to be inspired, but you also want to be entertained. And it's also, that time-honored love story that you sort of mentioned. Yes. So you called it Christian Contemporary.
Yes.
And so that was very intentional for you. What did you feel like in terms of the space of stories about love or romance that maybe lack in there for some readers?
I just think that I'm not sure if I understand the question, but
meaning it was the intentionality going for Christian contemporary versus just going traditional love story.
I think it is a traditional love story, but it definitely has some bigger questions in it that follow sort of the Christian follow a religious arc. And so I wanted something, when big things happen, sometimes, if you're Christian, you do battle on your knees. Sometimes we can't, there's some things we can't fight ourselves. And so it definitely has that sort of theme in it.
Which I think people can also connect with too. But I think also it's a PG love story, I think is where I was going with it.
It is.
For folks who like that kind of story but don't want to read what they don't want to see.
It's low spice, but it definitely has some heat in it. I don't think romance readers will be disappointed.
Yeah.
It definitely has. It's a little forbidden love, but it definitely is closed door.
Is missing in not only like television and all entertainment is this idea that you can have, you still get the story through, still get the passion through, still get the point through, and you don't have to do it with what you don't want to, you wouldn't want to see in someone's private bedroom.
And this is, it's a story about a fighter, and he's very much an alpha guy. He's very attractive. He's kind of in the prime of his life, and part of his battle is the flesh. And you kind of feel that tension back and forth in the story.
What made you think, Charlsie, I got to get this out now? You're a debut author. I know you're a busy mom. You've obviously had a phenomenal career. Why now? Why did you think at this stage in your life this was the perfect timing to set When the Ocean Roars out for everybody?
Some of that's not in my hands. It was traditionally published by Iron Stream Media, and I really am grateful for them for believing me in this book. So I wrote this book a couple years ago, and I put it aside, and I let it sit, and I kept writing. When I first started writing, I really didn't have I felt led to write, but I did not feel I wasn't really writing for other people. It was almost anxiety therapy for myself. But I finished one book, then I finished another book, and I didn't know what to do with them. And so I started entering my books in contests. And the books did really well in contests. So, like you said, when you write, you don't always know how people will receive it. Mm-hmm. So that was a good gauge for me to see, did people like it? What was the feedback? And, I was developing my craft as well at that time. And so I worked really hard on the book and polished it. I stopped working several years ago to be home and be more flexible with my kids. And when I did that, I, picked up the books, cleaned it up, and I took it to a conference. This book actually was an American Christian Fiction Writers Genesis finalist last year, which is a national award. So that was great. And it actually hit #1 on Amazon yesterday.
Fantastic. Because didn't you debut yesterday?
It debuted, yes. So that was huge. It's in the Christian romance category. But like I said, it's a good, in full disclaimer, it does have some faith-based elements, but and some readers want to avoid that, but some don't mind that.
And embrace that.
It's definitely a crossover.
And Pamela in Biloxi, she's asking us what the name of the book is. You just tuned in. Hey, Pam, it's When the Ocean Roars. It is a novel by Charlsie Estess.
Yes.
And so When the Ocean Roars, can you give a little behind the title, or does that give too much away of the book?
Yeah, it does give a lot away about the book, but
that's fine.
I will say this. So if I can get to it, there is a theme verse, and it really comes from this, and if you read the book, it definitely sets the stage. But Psalm 46, 1-3 talks about that God is our refuge and strength, a helper who is always found in times of trouble. When the ocean, it goes on and it talks about the oceans roaring and the mountains toppling. So it came from that.
If folks want to snag the book, where do they get it?
So it's on Amazon. It is on, you can order it from Barnes & Noble website. I have dropped some copies off if you're in Jackson at Lemuria, Impressions Books out in Flowood, in Brookhaven. Hall and Company will have it, After 5 Design, and there are going to be some other locations. So follow my website, and you'll see all of the locations, christianbook.com.
All righty. We'll stick with us. We got more for you coming up next.